Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. This is Shanika with your Wednesday word. Thank you so much for joining me for this Power 10, and it generally is like 10 or 15, sometimes 20 minutes. But today will be a short one, Power 10, I believe. So thank you so much for joining me for this Wednesday word. I really appreciate you joining me. Today's message is... the title of it is as simple as believing, as simple as believing. And it's going to come from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 9 through 14. And I'm going to be reading from the NRSV version. But I really do love this particular story, of this particular recounting of a healing story in the Bible with the prophet Elisha and Naaman, who was a general in the king of Aram's army. It's a really great story, but it really spoke to me the other day during my Bible study, just about something that we all struggle with, and that is believing. And then even with the act of faith and the act of belief, we always feel that we have to do great things in order for God to be able to hear our prayers and to answer our prayers. And sometimes it's just as simple as believing. So let's go ahead and go to the Word of God and see what He has for us. And so again, I'm going to be reading from 2 Kings. Hey, Nisa. I'm going to be reading from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 9 through 14. So let's go ahead and go to the Word of God. And it says, "So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, 'Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean.' But Naaman became angry and went away saying, 'I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and he would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not the Abana and Pharpar rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?' He turned and went away in a rage. But his servants approached him and said to him, 'Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he had said to you was, wash and be clean?' So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean." So just to give you a little bit of background story, again, Naaman was a commander, a general in the army of the king of Aram, and he had heard about the prophet Elisha. And that he was doing healings, that he was able to heal him of leprosy. So the king then sent him to the king of Israel and said, "Hey, have your prophet heal my general, my commander." And so the king of Israel, he was distraught, and he was like, "What am I going to do?" And he went ahead and sent him to Elisha. And even instead of Elisha coming out to speak directly to Naaman, to talk to him about his healing, to talk to him about his illness and his disease, Elisha didn't even do any of those things worthy of what some people, or even what Naaman himself saw of a person of title and stature and respect. But even beyond that, what Elisha did is that he sent a messenger to talk to Naaman and say, "Go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times, and you will be healed and you will be clean." And so Naaman, he is a person that he is a commander of an army. He is used to commanding the attention of people. He is used to commanding his men. He is used to sending people out to be able to do his task. And so as such, when he received the messenger of Elisha, he felt some kind of way. He felt rage because he expected that, number one, that the man of God would come out to be able to speak to him, to acknowledge him, and then to wave his hands over the spot of leprosy, and to be able to do something that was extraordinary in order for the healing to occur. So instead of receiving what the messenger was telling him originally, Naaman, he reacted in rage, and he decided to leave. But if it was not for his servants. His servants said, but Master, Father, if they had told you to do something that was impossible or extraordinary, would you not have done it? Instead, he has told you to do something as simple as going to this river and dipping 7 times. And so Naaman at that point reconsidered, and he went and he did everything that the prophet Elisha's messenger told him that he was supposed to do, everything that the man of God told him that he was supposed to do. And so he went into the Jordan River. And guess what? He dipped himself 7 times and he was healed of his leprosy. His flesh was restored so much to the point that it was like the flesh of a young boy. So all those things, even the age of battle and the scars and everything was removed from his body because his flesh went back to youthfulness. And so he was clean. He was made clean. He was no longer had to deal with the curse of leprosy. He no longer had to deal with being a leper and having to deal with those things in his body. But let's go back to looking at this, because as simple as believing is the title of today's message. And so I just want to talk to you about 3 simple points and 3 quick things that I want to be able to point out to you when it comes to the word of God. Number 1, Naaman went to his king in Aramaic and said that, hey, I have heard that there is this person that can heal me of leprosy. And so I just want to say from the beginning, Naaman did something that we need to be able to recognize from a point of faith and belief, is that Naaman expected God to move. He wasn't sure how it was going to happen. But he went out on a limb saying, hey, I have heard that there is a possibility of my healing. So he put himself in position that he was able to move forward towards his healing. So wherever you are in your life, put yourself in position to move forward, whatever you are expecting of God. And the first way that you can be able to do that is to expect God to move on your behalf. Your belief of God is grounded in your hope and expectations of God as well. You have to believe that God can. You have to believe that God will. You have to hope that God can, and you have to hope that God will, and expect great and good and godly things that will happen to you within your life. That's the first thing that we see within this body of text, which even beyond the verses that I read, when we look at Naaman's story. The number 2 thing is that you have to recognize that you don't have to jump through hoops and things for impossible for God to be able to move in your life, for God to be able to bless you, for God to be able to heal you. God is not requiring you to do any of those things. He can, but he's not requiring you to do those things. What he simply is requiring is for you to believe, for you to be able to have faith that his intentions towards you are good, are great, and godly, that he knows that he wants to bless you, give you favor, that you believe that God has the greatest things in store for you. And Naaman had to understand and struggle with that. He didn't have to do the impossible. He didn't have to have Elisha come out and lay hands on him and pray on him and pray in tongues and do all of these things and call down the heavens on him in order to heal him of his leprosy. God can, Elisha could have, but that's not what was required in this setting. He simply had to have enough faith to go and do the simple thing that he was required to do, which leads us to the third thing. The third thing is that when God has spoken to you about a situation where he is hearing your prayers and he is responding to you, he is telling you to do 1, 2, and 3, something that may be as simple as, hey, go do this, write that paper, call this person, submit this particular things, believe in yourself. I'm going to open up those doors for you. Whatever God is calling you to do, the simple instructions, I want you to be obedient to the word that you hear from God and move and do those things. Naaman was surrounded by people, his servants, where they were able to speak to him in the midst of his anger and in the midst of his rage and say, hey, it doesn't have to be all of these things that you had the expectation in order for your healing to occur, in order for your miracle to occur. Instead, it is something simple. So why not do this thing? So whatever God is instructing of you, whatever he sends someone to remind you of, to speak to you, I want to encourage you to follow those instructions, to be obedient to those things. It doesn't have to have all of this hoopla again in order for God to move. He just wants you to simply believe, to follow, to be obedient. And when you are able to do that, when you turn everything over to him, then he will move in your life in such a mighty way. And what you have have been praying for, what you have been seeking will show up in your life. This is a perfect example of that Naaman story. Again, he expected that he had to do all of these things because that's what he expected within his human self. But God didn't require any of those things. God did not speak through Elijah for Naaman to do any of those things. God said, I want you to do this thing. And how many of you know we are able to hear this story, to read this story, because even then God was able to get the glory through Naaman's healing, where we can then turn around and use this story for reflection upon our own lives, for revelation upon our own lives, for what God is desiring to do. So he is still getting the glory, even for something that occurred millennia ago, for us to be able to understand him and how he moves and that he desires to move on our behalf. So I just want to encourage you this day for this Wednesday word. Remember, it doesn't require a lot of things for God to be able to move. But what it does require is for you to simply believe. Thank you so much for joining me for this Wednesday word. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of your week. I hope you are blessed and highly favored in all ways and in all things until we meet again next Wednesday. May you and your family be blessed. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all. See you next week.